Happy Gaudete Sunday. My name is Shannon Williams, and I am a parishioner at Newman. I'm privileged to serve as a lector and as part of the RCIA team. As we celebrate this third Sunday of Advent, you may have noticed something different. The third Sunday is when we light the rose-colored candle, and we start to see the rose-colored accents as part of our liturgy. I love this about our church. It's one of our beautiful traditions that kind of serves as a wake-up call. If you have been really focused during Advent, good for you. But if you've perhaps been distracted, maybe professionally, by all of the year-end deadlines and activities associated with your work, or perhaps personally with all of the extra activities that happen during this time of year, the rose color serves as a reminder to kind of get our attention, to say, hey, wait a minute, something big's getting ready to happen. Are you focused? Are you paying attention? And if we haven't been, it serves as a gentle reminder to kind of get back into the rhythm of Advent. So I love this particular Sunday. I also really like thinking about the Gaudete word itself, which comes from Latin. It means rejoice. And so it gives us an opportunity to kind of shift our focus from where we were last week, really focused on hope, to this idea of joy, of really starting to anticipate that the Lord's birth is near. And that's another important transition of this Sunday. It's not just that we're waiting, but now it's really getting close. It's near. And so as we think about joy, it perhaps is an opportunity to really reflect on what do we mean when we think about joy? Joy is a fruit of the Spirit. And perhaps before we can even think about a fruit of the Spirit, perhaps we need to think a little bit about the gifts of the Spirit. So the Catechism tells us that the gifts of the Spirit are permanent dispositions which make man docile in following the prompts of the Holy Spirit. And that's from Catechism 1830. So these gifts are received in the soul along with sanctifying grace. So that's the gifts. The fruit of the Spirit, the Catechism tells us in 1832 that the fruits of the Spirit are perfections that the Holy Spirit forms in us as the first fruits of eternal glory. In other words, the fruits are the effects of our docility to the Spirit, the effects of the gifts. And the fruits grow over time as we become more and more attentive to the promptings of the Spirit. So, what does it mean to live with the fruit of joy? Does it mean that we're always happy and smiling and singing a tune and just a joy to be with all the time? Of course not. That is not human, right? We have a whole variety of emotions. But I think that instead of thinking of joy as pure happiness, perhaps we can think about it as the reception of God's love, the reception of His unyielding, unconditional love for us, and the reception of His love that He offers us through those that He puts in our lives. I think we can also think about it as gratitude. Imagining joy as gratitude, gratitude for all that God has done for us and all of the ways that He shows us His love, His mercy, His grace. And so really there's an opportunity as we focus on joy, as we think about how can we be grateful in all circumstances. Pope Francis calls joy consolation. He also equates joy with trust. In Evangelii Gaudium, Pope Francis actually uses the word joy 59 times in that document. But there's one particular reference that really stood out to me. He said, slowly but surely, we all have to let the joy of faith slowly revive as a quiet yet firm trust, even amid the greatest distress. And he's talking in that particular section of the document, he's talking about times in our lives when we are facing great challenges and difficulties. And he says, I'm going to read part of that again. We all have to let the joy of faith revive as a quiet yet firm trust. And that made me think about Mary and Elizabeth and the stories that we are hearing at this time of year. Of course, Mary and Elizabeth both expectant mothers, full of joy, excitement about the birth of a child, and there had to be anxiety. There had to be uncertainty. Mary didn't fully understand how she even came to be with child. Elizabeth was old and she had to wonder, am I going to be able to get down on the floor and crawl around with this child? What are people saying about this old woman who's now expecting a child? And so it was the tension of both joy and anxiety on some level, right? And that's so human. Can't we all relate to that? And so I love what Pope Francis says is that joy is trust. And when we can really lean into the joy of faith, when we can really think about joy as love, as gratitude, as consolation, then we can really think about living into that fruit of joy in all circumstances. And so while not easy, I know and I'm sure, it's a beautiful opportunity to really reflect this week on how is the Lord inviting you into joy in your life? How can you turn away from the distractions of this season, the deadlines of this season, and instead focus on His love, on gratitude for His presence, for His gifts of the Spirit, and this fruit of joy that is growing within your heart. So perhaps you might light a rose-colored candle, sit in a quiet space, and really reflect on the joy of your faith. Happy Advent.